following out of this chapter, I have a lot of information that actually backs my theories on both Elantir and Selene. So now we both get some of the big hype behind Selene, what makes Selene apparently such a big deal of a dragon, as well as we have just some information on Elantir, which again by itself is really just an additional big bonus into this whole 100 Years quest. Is it's not just, yeah, they're gonna go fight each of these dragons. Each dragon is its own kind of crazy piece in the saga, and it's its own kind of just in general presentation of what exactly makes them of their own their own corner of this dragon god template. They're not just like, oh yeah, they're in a cave somewhere, they're just really powerful dragons. Each one has its own massive dynamic. Like we saw Merphobia, he was he's trying to redeem himself, trying to become a better person. He was this dragon out to really kind of just do something good with the rest of his life. With Alderaan, like, he just was a outright bad person, a bad being, because obviously he's a dragon. He just saw humans very maliciously. There was no saving for him, and as well as he was just an all-around danger to everything. And already we have a lot of big hype around Selene, but also Selene's just ties towards the plot. Because one thing we do know is that all of the dragons fled from Acnologia. Like, we haven't gotten anything on we haven't really got anything on details from Merphobia or Ignia, but we did see, like, Alderaan 100 years after Acnologia started doing his thing, that Alderaan tried to fight him, and then went for 300 years trying to rest and recovery, and obviously grew to the size he is, or at least was, and became as powerful as he was. Like, there's a lot really just to kind of like work with when you really kind of just look at them all individually, because now we have Selene being this cross-dimensional dragon who just seems to travel between worlds at will. I mean, super badass already. I can't wait to figure out more about Elantir and what exactly, like, what characters we're gonna see inside of this place, because it definitely plays into a theory I've had towards it since its whole, like, oh, it's a realm place and it's not a being. Because originally I thought it was going to be some form of person, like a dragon or another, like maybe a god or maybe a type of spell or an entity, but it being its own world is really helpful to, like, my beliefs of some of the characters, maybe even, getting another go. I really want to see Acnologia come back. But here, like, the chapter starts out, like, you have just Edolas Lucy doing stuff with Earthlight Lucy, and she ends up giving her, like, her outfit from her in the Edolas arc when she was, a lot younger, right? I mean, that was just pretty fun just to see. I like the nostalgia factor in there, as well as it's a nice little comedic point just to add to into this whole situation, because these ones, like, these chapters are definitely playing more heavily, obviously, on the ships and the like more personal character driven stuff, and then just like some of this crazy big plot stuff that keeps dropping in the end. It's rough, because it's two of the things that I think both, like, everybody wants, but I think because of the bi-weekly status, people become a little bit impatient. So I like that we get, like I said, more of the shipping and character driven stuff. And then it's like, but when we do get important lore stuff during these periods within the series, it's really big important lore stuff. Like, now we have information on this other realm, and we have Selene, and there was a small note near there about the Exceed, which goes towards another theory I have that I'll get to in a minute. But I did like the moments with Grige and Nasha between Natsu and Gray, because it shows what they're gonna be like when they're parents, when they get to that further stage in their lives, but their rivalries are still gonna kind of be there, and they're still gonna be butting heads over relatively nothing. And then there's, like, the parts where you have Nasha waving at Grige. Grige seems to have either shy or some form of, like, crush on her. Just little setting stuff for the sake of the people who just really want to see some nice character bonding and interaction chapters, because that's one of the ones I've seen a lot of people work over. It's like, if Natsu and Gray had kids, the fact that one's male, one's female, obviously that's material for shippers already before the fact. So I'm sure the people that are always extremely just over the moon when you have chapters like this, I'm sure that they're having a good time. I am enjoying it as well, but clearly I am way more hyped over the stuff with Elantir and Selene. Like, this is definitely going to be really, really, like, big going into the arc, because when you look at each of them also individually, like Mercephobia, like, they didn't really fight Mercephobia's followers. Like, his followers were a small, like, very well more kind of like knit community. Like, theirs was kind of more like the Fairy Tail crew is with their guild. There's a handful of them, and even if you were in the Fairy Tail guild, like, there's like small characters that you probably wouldn't see a lot, but you'd know them enough at least to like have their name. And that's probably what it is with Elmina. Whereas with Alderaan, they weren't nothing to Alderaan. Like, he just saw them as nourishment. They were just food for him to consume, get his power and energy back. And with Selene's is gonna be like her own empire, so she's gonna kind of be like if you took Zaref's position over Alvarez and then gave it to a dragon. Like, hers is gonna be extremely intriguing just to witness visually. And as well as it is inside of Elantir, I think makes it way more of a hype thing, because Elantir might possibly be, just by the wording of it, that they're using a transcendental world. Then is it going to potentially be something like the realm of the gods or the afterlife for Fairy Tail? It's some form of crazy existence outside of either of the other two, of Earthline or Edolas. And then, like, the characters are going towards, like, they're in the capital, they're just kind of doing their thing. And, like, I like Urza's weird disguise. Like, she's got the sombrero and, like, this poncho and glasses, just trying to, like, sneak in. And, like, you see a lot of just, again, very nostalgic faces. You know, people are doing Sugar Boy, nice to see him. You know, you got Hughes. I actually really liked that Coco took Panther Lily's spot as the first Holy Knights Division captain. I thought that was always just a nice little kind of trivia thing for Panther Lily. The fact that Nightwalker wasn't ranked first, hers was like, her division was number 2. It's never said obviously like which one's stronger than the other, but I always assumed that like she would be like the top. But even if she was the strongest, but for some reason Panther Lily, I'm guessing because, you know, he was an Exceed, kind of had that spot. But Coco getting it, I really liked. I like seeing adult Coco too. She just was a very likable character, I think, in general. Really friendly, and like when you saw like some of the darker sides to members of Edolas' empire, like Byro and stuff, and obviously like Nightwalker. Some of them were pretty vicious, and there was some noting of it even actually earlier in the chapter with Edolas Lucy, like bringing up the fact that looking at Urza reminds her obviously of the Edolas Urza Nightwalker. It reminds them of the person that, you know, killed a bunch of their friends. But she's like, you know, but we also killed a lot of soldiers back during that time, and the war is over now. And that's one of the things that, like, I saw some people talking about over the last 2 weeks when it came to this chapter, is that a lot of people were acting like Nightwalker should be thrown in prison like the second Mistgun takes over. Like, definitely not, because even though she did bad stuff, like as noted, so did the Fairy Tail Guild in Edolas at the time. But you have to keep in mind the fact that the Fairy Tail Guild was a dark guild at that point. They were criminals opposing the Empire. It was effectively treason. And even it's kind of like in the gray thing for both of them, because it just kind of went really south on both ends, and obviously very hostile. And it really just depends on what perspective you're looking at it from for them, because like Edolas is a really interesting arc in the fact that it is kind of like a little bit of a gray zone between morals. Like, they were going to save a whole world by, you know, sacrificing people that like that exceed that they viewed as like a problem, as well as like a city from another world that they have absolutely no real connection to. But they were going to help their entire world from it. It really just depends on which side you're looking at it from. But That was very silly of the idea for Nightwalker to be thrown in prison. It's like, no, that was during a different time. They were, they were at war with each other. They were fighting constantly. So it's a silly thing to kind of think about. It's only if you look at it in black and white that you really think that Nightwalker deserves like prison time or anything. But I do like her maintaining her position and instead working it towards like her ambitions and her drive towards a completely different thing. Because when they kind of meet Mistgun, and Mistgun actually like it's really weird because Mistgun, like, he's got the longer hair, and I thought it would make him look more like Sieg Hart, because obviously no, that's the difference. The big difference, if you just generally looked at Sieg and Jalal, is the length of hair. You're not looking at outfits, just general length of hair. And before anyone says it, no, Sieg Hart was not the first. It was Mugen from Magician. If you look at Hiromishima's for original one shot, the whole point is he's putting his original main character in all these different stories. And in this case, Edolas, like, I was gonna say Edolas Jalal, but Mistgun, he looks so much skinnier, I'd say. Like, something about it, he looks thinner than before. I think it just might be because the only thing that really changed about his physical design is his hair. I do really like his outfit. I like his, his design and his throne. Because one of the things that I think is really underrated is when Hiromishima just draws thrones. Like, you look at Marred Gears, or you look at the one that the White Witch sat on in Drasil. You look at Hades' throne. I don't know, something about like their thrones is always just really unique and badass. But after that point, like, you have Nightwalker show up, and like I said, she's taken kind of like her personality towards like hunting fairies and directed it instead of being like, she's like a combat maid pretty much. She's there to serve the king of Edolas, but obviously now it's the prince. He's not king yet, and in a time of peace where there's relatively no large-scale crime, because they mentioned how like there's not a lot of security because there's not a lot of problems they really have to do or deal with. So what way is she going to help Mr. Good instead? Just doing things generally for him. She pretty much becomes a maid. Like, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. And it's even pointed out from Gray that she has she's got a thing for Mr. Gun, and he's even said that things have been eventful. And I know that there's like a small story in the novel, but obviously it's not going to cover the course of 9 years of what's been going on in Edolas. And now we get to the good stuff. We get to what's juicy. We get to what is really exciting over this chapter, because everything before this, it's like, cool, like, I want to see the character interactions. I want to see some of the the comedic parts, like when you have Sugar Boy's like talking to him. He's like, he's like, oh, Fire Boy, Cap, Kitty Boy talking to Happy, and then he's like not really sure what to call Lucy, and calls her Milk Girl, and like that part was pretty funny. And Lucy's obviously just like, get the fuck out of here, you weird pink armored dude. I like the small interactions. Obviously, I think everybody does, especially like the funnier parts. But seeing stuff like Coco in general just come back and come and visit Lucy, it's just a pleasant extra thing. Byro living again is a surprise. I figured he'd be dead by now, but because it's only 9 years, it's not like it's 30. But then we get into stuff that is not only big towards what's coming up, but I think it actually helps a lot in the larger scale of Fairy Tail. Because one of the things about Edolas that I've always criticized Edolas for is it feels a lot like an anime only arc, like it happened in the anime. Like if I knew the information of both the Starry Sky arc and Edolas, or even the Eclipse Spirits, I would assume out of those, if one of them was an anime only arc, I would assume it's Edolas. Like, Edolas to me has always felt almost like an anime only arc. The only things that kind of really came out of it was pretty much Panther Lily, because let's face it, Lizana coming back did very little, and Panther Lily, a very reoccurring character, always around with Gajil, made him way more noticeable and way more of a impact into the series. Whereas, like, I think now with what's going on in Edolas and expanding stuff is really, really intriguing. And I mentioned earlier that there was like something about the Exceed, because while they're talking, they're like, oh, you know, we couldn't have called you guys into Edolas because we don't have magic. We can't use the anima portal anymore. And there's a mention from Carla that it could be an exceed. Like, she says it could be an exceed, but that's only a possibility, implying obviously that, you know, there's an exceed obviously involved, that being Toke, obviously, with the White Witch. And Happy saying how we did go to Edolas using our wings that time. Here's the thing, when it comes to the characters, right, when it comes to what happened in that arc, it's always like, under my assumption is that, you know, the small amounts of anima, like after anima portal was used, it didn't fully close, so they were able to go through the portal, you know, fly up into it and go into Edolas. But that is a theory that I've had recently after, you know, the previous chapter when you have the interaction between the White Witch and Toka, that she's like saying how, oh, you know, I can still use your magic, and talk about Aqua Era, that, oh, well, maybe the Exceed have an ability, rather, that is, you know, to go between dimensions. Like, maybe that's where anima came from originally. It has to do with something with the Exceed, or has to do with, like, you know, the origins of the Exceed, because the Exceed being able to use magic in Edolas it's never really gone too far into, and I think that this arc could do a lot at kind of like giving us information further into like the world effect. Like, if we find out more about the Exceed, you know, we find out obviously more about Selene, because there's a lot of stuff now Selene's magic can connect to. Like, if she travels through dimensions, then was she part of the reason that, like, that anima was invented? There's already the possibility maybe she invented, maybe she's the one that created Moondrip, that maybe created the celestial spirits, maybe is related to the creation of fairy glitter. There's a lot of stuff that she has the potential to really tie to, and having a connection with the Exceed, I think, would be really, really cool too, because they're mentioning the Anima Portal and the Anima Project, and said there was another target besides the stuff in Earthland, and that was Elantir. And Jalal, oh sorry, Mistgun, it is Jalal, but obviously I'm not gonna say Edolas Jalal, he's just to say Mistgun. He says that the transcendental magic world, and while describing and saying the reason that they didn't do it, the reason why they didn't go after that one, because when describing it, obviously he's saying the transcendental magic world, it's a transcendental, it is, from the sound of it, godly. Like, I think it might even, like I said, might even be some form of heavenly realm of the fairy tale world. Maybe Beta Heaven will kind of like connect that to, who knows. But if you have two targets, clearly Elantir would be like vastly superior than Earthland. Why would you not go, why would you go towards the inferior one if the superior one is an option? And the reason that is, they said the reason they didn't like target Elantir for the Anima Project is because of Selene, a dragon that crosses through dimensions. So that means that if they ever got Selene's attention as a threat, Selene would just come through and she would annihilate everything. She'd completely wipe Edolas into nothing. And again, it's so cool to think of her like that. And the way that I'm kind of like wondering how it works is if maybe she can travel between dimensions using the moon. Like, imagine if she uses the moon as a portal to go into another realm. And I know Hiromashima really likes Dark Souls and like Bloodborne and stuff, and that was one of the really cool things in not a big spoiler, small spoiler, in Bloodborne, when I'm trying to remember what the last boss is called, the one that comes from the moon, when he like kind of just transcends down from the moon. I imagine something like that with Elantir. Like, or sorry, when Selene, like when she comes into the world, she descends all the way from the moon and just flies down to the surface. And so she has, and it be at night too, really, probably wherever you are, so it would have this godlike presence to her, this mystical dragon that ascends from the moon and just does whatever the fuck she wants. But it also really builds on Acnologia, because you have a guy who she would, you know, to get away from, she left dimensions. She completely left. Like, she's so dangerous that she, or like the Acnologia is so dangerous that she just said, I'm just gonna go to a different dimension, see ya, and just whisks herself out entirely and leaves. Like, there's so much in this chapter from just the last couple pages to really build off of. there's a lot to really kind of just wrap your head around and try and get an idea of what Mishima is doing and what's really to come up. This is gonna, I think, gonna be a really big hype arc, because when it came to Merge Phobia, that was like the introduction to everything. It was the introduction to everything that's, you know, going on, getting us a Dragon Eaters, which again, I'm wondering how the Dragon Eaters are gonna get there. But also, when it comes to Alderaan, it was like the arc where they actually have to, you know, work as a team and overcome and defeat a dragon god straight out, no help. It was designed like that, like defeating Alderaan is designed in a way that obviously you're gonna want a lot of people. Like it's fighting in 1v1 that would be really fucking hard, and then him be active from the start, because approaching Alderaan awake would be difficult, considering like the shockwaves from his yells and his movement would just be terrifying in general to get close to, as well as thicket of arms. But with Selene, I think Selene's arc is going to be really good. I have a really good feeling about this. I'm really hyped to see where this goes and to see what her crew is, because like I said, Merge Phobia's got like worshippers were a very small town. He had a handful of people that really kind of worshipped him. With Alderaan, there was obviously large masses of people, but they couldn't fight. Like, he had his god seeds as his subordinates. Merge Phobia didn't really have any, you know, the kind of the struggle at that level was, you know, the Dragon Eaters during that arc. Whereas Selene is gonna have a lot, like, even because the thing is, Selene is either in charge, she either rules over Elantir, or she has a high position in Elantir. Or I mean, like, if she is there, like, assume that she rules over it, then she obviously has to be like, she would have every single powerful character there and under control. Or if she's just high ranking, like highly placed in the realm itself, then she's still gonna have influence to really, you know, probably bring up whatever forces that world has. And I can't wait to see like what we're gonna like just have presented and like revealed to us in that arc entirely. There's like, it could be an afterlife, it could be a god realm, it could just be like some crazy new like magical wonderland, like a Fantasia kind of style. There's just monsters everywhere, all the landscapes crazy. Who knows? There's so much really coming up that I can't wait for. This is definitely one of the better openings, I think, for a fairy tale arc. Just in the way that it kind of comes out of nowhere, ties back to older stuff, and really hypes up this bad guy. Like, the only one I could say, like, for sure, like, looking at some of the other prequels, like, the openings, like, I would say Tartarus probably has the best opening, like, just kind of, like, building up into the Tartarus arc the way that it was. But I think this is definitely big hype. This is definitely, like, really big hype up there. Like, I can't wait to see, like, where this is going. And this isn't even over. This is just them bringing it up. We don't even know how it's going to be when they first get into Elantir, what kind of world we're going to see. And Selene's reaction as well. Selene's reaction to all this, I think, is going to have a lot of just outright like explanation of her character. Now, my question is always, if they go over there, like, are they going to bring anybody else, or is it just going to be the main team? I really want Jalal to be involved. I mean, I guess when it comes to Selene, like, she is a way for any of these characters to get involved. Like, there's still, like, you could easily just have her involve Jalal of her own free will, because I really feel like Irene in some way is going to be relevant in this arc. Obviously, when it comes to the dragon god, Selene, or Irene has to have some form of important tie if she just existed in any fathomable way during each of these. Like, the only reason she wasn't now is because she went back into like that slumber state inside of oh, not slumber state, but, you know, she wasn't as prepped up, I would say, and kind of like able to be used in the arc with Alderaan. Plus, she never really had a chance for Alderaan to be seen. Maybe if you had you know, had something with Rice, but I don't really see any of that happening. But when it comes to her being more frequent, she has to have some way of tie to Selene, because Selene should be smart enough and capable enough to probably see Irene, or at least know she's in, like, her presence is within, you know, vicinity. But I feel like with her backstory, she would have to have a grudge on Urza because of, you know, obviously it's Irene's fault that Acnologia was made, and involve Jalal somehow. I can't really think of anything otherwise, like, at the moment, unless Jalal figures out a way to get into Elantir. And Jalal is a very intelligent guy. We could easily have him know something, like, a little bit about Elantir, or be told it by Toka. Maybe Toka goes and, like, takes Jalal and Laxus or somebody there. There's always possibilities. Actually, I would really like to see Gildarts end up being there, and it's because he's like, there's very slim chance. Could you imagine just as an additional thing? Because it's possible, probably not. If we see Gildarts is there, but it's like Selene took him there, like, and he's been like hooking up with her. That'd be the ultimate notch on Gildarts' belt, though, wouldn't it be? Like, betting a super dragon that just kind of like crosses dimensions. That'd be badass, actually. Maybe this will actually like have something with Gildarts' backstory, because I think Gildarts needs some form of arc, you know, personal arc in the 100 Years Quest. And his moves, a lot of his moves have the naming to do with heaven. So if this is some form of heavenly realm, maybe it will kind of like build into whatever Gildarts' backstory is, because that's one thing we still haven't gotten. And I feel like if Kana is mentioned up again, because I think that Fairy Glitter will have some tie to Selene, just based off of the way that like it works and the way that Moondragon abilities seem to work. So if she ends up being relevant, then I feel like Gildarts needs to be relevant, because there's still the potential that the White Witch, not the White Witch, rather Toka, ends up bringing people with her. Maybe she'll be like, oh, you guys are also capable, I'll bring you, and, you know, explain all the Elantir situation. So we'll see. There's definitely a lot to really, you know, wrap your head around and work with. And with the build off of this chapter, because in the last chapter, there was obviously stuff that was mentioned we were gonna see. Like, we were gonna see Mistgun, we were gonna see Nightwalker. I felt like the fact that they brought those characters up meant that there was going to be some parts where we just, in general, see them again and have some moments. And it's cool that Mistgun is part of what is bringing this into the Selene arc. So, fantastic there. And there should be nothing left from the next chapter, just giving us a lot of information on Elantir. Like, I feel like the next chapter we're gonna find out a lot of information on it. Maybe even get, like, you know, a classic, hey, this is what it's like, and we get a panel of just like showing us what the realm kind of is structured like, you know, some form of really cool just representation of what's in there. I don't know. Also some Selene lore. I definitely want some Selene lore. I think everybody wants some Selene lore. But anyway, other than that, though, comment below, thumbs up the video, before the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. More than that, I appreciate everybody who's already subscribed, and thank you all for listening. Bye.